Good afternoon, everybody, and good morning if you are in the States and anywhere else in the world. Thank you for joining us today. This is Trevor and Lenny on the Green Room, and we are excited to be with you once again on this beautiful Thursday afternoon. Let me just see. I do apologize to those that are trying to follow us live on Facebook today. It seems that Facebook has decided to change and tweak their model a little bit again. So we are needing to get a bit more in touch with our tech support that side to see how we can rectify that for next week. But today, we've got a great panelist. We have finally gotten to one of our applicants' request that they would want to find out some more about education in America. So we are very happy to welcome Rebecca, who will give her introduction just now. Trevor, you want to do an intro for us?
Absolutely. So like Lenny said, welcome, guys. It's obviously the Induku Group hosting the Green Room. If you haven't heard about it as yet, you need to go and look at our website. But it's myself, Trevor Thomas, and my business partner, Lenny de Villiers, and the rest of the Induku team. And what we do is we help families that would very much like to go and live a life in America. So if it is your dream and you'd like to go to America, what we do is a program called an EB3. It's an employment-based green card, permanent residency. We also have an E2 program, which is a fantastic program if you're looking to invest in the States, if you have a passport from one of the countries that have got a treaty, a commerce treaty with there. And also then we are very much interested in talking to you if you have got any nursing background and you'd like to find yourself in America, as well as then one other one, which is for the truck drivers and perhaps other people that are currently in America on a temporary solution, looking to make that more permanent. Then you please need to get hold of somebody in the Induku team that will be able to guide you on the right steps and share with you the different options that you might have in terms of your future, if that's something that you'd like to do. Fantastic opportunities in the USA. And of course, permanent residency is something that we all would most certainly want to have in our pockets. Len, maybe just a brief chat on the Green Room.
Yep. Guys, we are approaching webinar number 50 very, very soon. We will let you know when that happens, and we'll do a little bit of a celebration on that. But, guys, the Green Room came out of, lockdown last year. We were looking for ideas of how can we reach our applicants and how can we help them in the immigration space, because every time we get asked questions regarding any part of immigration, do you guys have a contact for this? Do you guys know anything about this? And eventually when we do this research, we decided to, let's do a webinar on this. Let's get some professional people in their fields and let's interview them. Let's record these things and let's put it on a library for people. So we went live on Facebook. So most of these things are all loaded on Facebook, and we are able to reach people and give them information. So we've done webinars on taking pets overseas, financial immigration, when should I tell mother-in-law that we're immigrating, all these little things that people don't think about. And today we've actually got a brand new topic. We have talked about schooling in America, but we are today talking about colleges in America, how to apply, a bit of details around this. We got hold of an expert in that field. But in the beginning of the year, we did start a new section of the Green Room. It's just adding a little bit of information about America as well, but it's also just mainly making it fun facts about America. So you might know these things, you might not know these things. I mean, I certainly didn't know these things. So pardon me if I bore you with these facts, but here are some things that I find about America that is pretty cool. Obviously, they are world-class athletes. American athletes have won more Olympic medals than athletes from any other country. This is something I find quite amazing. So climate diversity. So the United States is the only country that has all of Earth's 5 climate zones: tropical, dry, temperate, continental, and polar. That's quite amazing. What else? So office space, the Pentagon, the headquarters of the Department of Defense, is the world's largest office building by floor area. There's a couple of other ones I really found amazing. Slice of heaven. More than 9 in every 10 Americans have eaten pizza in the last month. So according to some estimates, Americans consume the equivalent of about, wait for it, 100 acres of pizza every day. That is quite amazing. Government property, nearly 1/3 of all land in the United States, or about 650 million acres, is federally owned. That is quite amazing. America does not entirely belong to Americans. You know, that's also a pretty cool thing. According to USDA, foreign investors own at least 28.3 million acres of the US farmland in area size of about Ohio. And here's something that's pretty cool, and we'll end with this. Is this: United States was the first nation to use the title of president for its head of state. All right, so there you go for your useless facts for today. And we will then jump into the important bit. And I think that's probably why everybody has jumped on today. So if I can just say hello to a few people that have actually gone. Karen de Toy, hello. Madeleine, this one is for you guys. Marie van der Merwe, Michael, Shane de Jager, Fadil, welcome guys, welcome. All right, Trev, over to you.
Yeah. Listen, I'll tell you what, if you're not joining our program and investing in Zion Homes, I think what you need to do is invest in a little pizzeria when we get to America.
Yeah.
Listen, so Rebecca Pitorius is with us today from Crimson Education. And if you don't know it yet, they are the leading guys that can help you in terms of university admissions. Rebecca, thank you so much for joining us today. And I'm going to ask you, if you wouldn't mind, sharing a little bit about who you are, a little bit about yourself, and then of course who you're representing today, and chatting to us about this important thing in education.
Sure, thanks Trevor and Lenny for having me. Just want to start by saying it's a miracle America has any athletes with all of that pizza intake. But so yeah, just a little bit about myself and Crimson. So I head up Crimson in the South Africa and also Africa region, although we're super busy in South Africa, but we do kind of have a number of clients from, you know, other parts of Africa as well, that we look after in our office. Our office is in Rosebank in Joburg, and I have a team that's split between kind of Joburg and Cape Town as well. So I always say I have one of the best jobs in the world. I get to speak to amazing students, amazing families, and of course, you know, results period is obviously really awesome for us as well. But just a little bit more about me. So I've been involved in education, you know, kind of for my whole career. So previously, you know, in curriculum development, also writing educational books as well. And then I moved into the kind of edtech space before, well, I mean, Crimson is also an edtech company, but then moving kind of fully into admissions, and I've been at Crimson about 3 years. So I've worked with lots and lots of students, guiding them to universities in the US, but also the UK, Europe, and other parts of the world as well. But in fact, it's just as well, this is a US focused webinar, because certainly more of our students apply to the US than any of the other kind of regions that we work with, you know, say UK or Europe or Canada or anywhere like that as well. So US a really popular destination for South Africans from a university point of view. And from a personal point of view, I have two boys in primary school, one who's at the Ridge School in Joburg and one who's heading to St. John's for high school next year. So involved in education from that point of view as well. And then just a little bit about Crimson and who we are. So we are in fact the world's leading admissions company when it comes to US and UK universities. Although we work with a broad range of students accessing all universities, you know, in some ways regardless of ranking, because we work very particularly to find the best fit university for students, of course. but we have particular expertise at top universities across the world, and obviously particularly in the US, where obviously, you know, there are those kind of prestigious historic institutions like the Ivy League universities that obviously are really competitive and so on as well. So our expertise really lies with working with students to help them gain admission to top universities, although we do work with a broad range of universities, and we use a mentoring kind of team approach. So each student would work with different people in their team, and then we support all aspects of not just the actual application process, but also the candidacy building process. So what do you need to do to develop your profile in order to be able to target a particular university or a particular tier of universities? So thinking about a top 10, a top 30, a top 50, a top 75 or 100. And what does a student need to do to be able to develop themselves, whether that's from grade 8, grade 9, grade 10, we have some grade 7s, in order to kind of obviously build their profile. And then we have a school as well. So Crimson Global Academy is an online high school where we have a number of South African students, and they would sit alongside, a class of global students. So some from Russia, UAE, and we offer an A-level curriculum. So students come to us to get obviously an internationally recognized qualification, and obviously an education that is mobile, obviously not disrupted by, I don't know, either immigration or a global pandemic, whichever one you're affected by.
Wow. Rebecca, that was a lot in a nutshell. I think that, you know, we can obviously spend a few hours unpacking these type of things. I think we want to try and keep it as high level for now as possible. And also, before I get to our questions, I want to you know, ask our attendees and the participants on this webinar, if they have any questions, is to please obviously put it onto the chat or the question section, so that we can address those for you as well. All right, Rebecca, I mean, I think what is good for us to maybe unpack is to try and see which schools you guys deal with, and maybe to see how does the process work, and how soon should we actually contact you guys. So Trevor and I have got children about going into teenagers, you know, so his boy has just gone into high school, you know, as we always say, Trevor and myself, we're also in the program, but when do we start, you know, looking at, you know, colleges and the process on that?
Sure. I mean, that's a great question. The one thing I would say there is that a common mistake that people make is leaving it too late. So for the US, and certainly for top US universities, time is your best friend, and the earlier you start, the better. And the reason for that is because South Africans are not necessarily as competitive as with having a local curriculum. Certainly those with a local curriculum are not as competitive. It's not just about marks, and there's an extracurricular program to consider. And so although South Africans do a broad range of extracurriculars, they don't necessarily focus on in-depth maybe, or focus on the ones that are relevant for admission. So I would say for the US, the sweet spot is probably grade 10. But truthfully, your application to a top US university particularly doesn't start in your matric year. It starts at least 3 years or more before then, when you're crafting a particular set of activities that will aid you to gain admission.
Okay.
That's good feedback. So we obviously have, as I was mentioning to you before we went live, approximately 120 odd families in the program, and these people have got, for example, kids that could be from the beginning of high school right up until, for example, a number of them that I know of are first year students at the moment. Is it too late for that first year student that's currently studying a particular subject to be in contact with yourselves, Rebecca, to find out what their options are? I mean, do you still take people at those late stages, if I can put it that way?
So we do. I think the one thing to consider is that transfer to universities is much harder. So as soon as you're enrolled in a South African institution or an institution, you're a transfer student. So a number of universities limit transfer students, so admission rates are lower. Not all universities take transfer students, and so on. But for and so even if you start again from scratch, you're still seen as a transfer student. So so it's important for people to do some research, you know, on particular universities and whether they take transfer students if they have one in mind. But certainly we work with a number of postgrad students as well as undergrad students as well.
So Rebecca, do you guys assist with, so say for instance, our children do get to a grade 10 scenario with guidance on, you know, career choices and what path they should be taking? I mean, I think I'm 40 and I'm still trying to figure out what I want to become, you know.
Fair enough, fair enough. It's a tough ask for teenagers, right? In terms of what do you want to do. And that's the amazing thing about the US system, right? You don't actually have to know. So obviously the US offers essentially a liberal arts undergrad degree, great for people who don't know what they want to do or have a really diverse range of interests. You know, so that's why the US system is amazing compared to say, you know, say South Africa or the UK, which is where you have to know what course you want to study. Having said that, our students that are not in, say, grade 12 or their final year go through what we call a non-APPEA program, and then we would cover, so we cover testing in terms of career testing, but we also do a self-discovery session with them. We do a designing your future session with them. And then we have them research majors and careers, and then we have them start their research in terms of different universities and how those align, because of course choosing a university is obviously related to, you know, kind of choosing a particular program. So for example, University of Texas in Austin, top 50 university, I think it is number 50 or 51, but if a student's applying to engineering, it's top, I don't know, 9, 10 or 11 in terms of engineering. So it's important to look at what area in terms of course you want to study as well if you have a particular target. So that is absolutely something we cover: majors, careers, and schools.
Yeah.
So Rebecca, if I may, and sorry, my internet is sometimes coming and going, so I hope that you guys are clear and you can hear me. I just want to ask, and maybe it's a good question. Forgive us. It's you know, coming as parents, what benefit does one have using a company like Crimson instead of, for example, going direct or the other? I mean, can I give you a little bit of space to give us that type of information? And I'm sure a lot of people will be contacting you after this webinar. But if you could just guide us a little bit, what benefit do we have by using Crimson?
Sure. I mean, it's a perfect question. I mean, we don't exist because you can't, as a parent or a student, can't go and fill out an online form, right? We don't exist because you can't access the Common App. So, sure. And I'm not saying it's quite as bad as, you know, kind of self-diagnosing a medical problem and then self-medicating, but in a lot of ways, right, you know, students get one shot. And we've had students who come to us after they've tried themselves and been rejected, and then they obviously reach out to us. But and obviously they've wasted a year plus, but you kind of get one shot. So essentially, you know, for me, it's I mean, even in my position, I wouldn't do a US application for my children. So when you have a team of admissions experts, they, you know, admissions consultants, that's their job. They're experts on the university landscape, what admissions officers are looking for. You have an application mentor who's checking your essay, your personal statement and your essays. You're going to get feedback that's a lot better than asking mom to check your admission essay, right? So from my point of view, you know, both as a parent and someone who's involved in admissions on a day-to-day basis, is go to the experts, you know, where we have really competitive countries like, you know, China, other countries in Asia, where students are very competitive. Very few of them would apply to these universities in the US without using an agency. So I think it's quite new in South Africa. It's quite niche. It's obviously not for everyone. You know, it's a premier service, but, you know, where you can go to an expert, where you can have someone, you know, choose the right schools for you, find the right fit. There are, you know, what, 4,000 universities or institutions in the US. It's not a case of getting into one, right? It's getting into the right one for you.
Right one.
That's going to fulfill all of your or your child's personal and professional requirements. I was chatting to a boy of ours that got into Oxford this morning, and he was saying to me, in his team, he had a team of 6. 5 of those people in his team had gone to either Oxford or Cambridge, or were at Oxford, where he was working with tutors. And what he said is that was amazing for him, to work with a team like that. You're not going to get that if you're doing it by yourself. So I think for me, it's as simple as, if you can use an expert from a financial and otherwise point of view, then you should go to an expert. It's a bit like processing whatever it is by yourself versus someone who has the in-depth knowledge around it.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I think it's maybe, to try and put it in perspective a little bit, is that in South Africa, you are just competing against South Africans to get into university. I mean, in the US, you're competing against the world to get into a certain amount of spots that are up for grabs. So if you want to get into it, you need, this is why experts have recognized the need for something like this. So I think
I just want to add there as well that the one thing, the other mistake people make is that they don't realize how competitive it truly is. You can have a South African student who's got 97% for everything, 100%, and they can be rejected from a university because it's not just about academics. So people don't understand how competitive it is or what they're required to do, because you don't need to do that for a South African university. Wow.
Yeah, so I mean, while we on that, about the amount of universities and colleges that are available in the States, who are some of the colleges that you guys deal with?
Sure. So all of them. I mean, essentially, I was looking this morning just at our most recent results as well. So we work. Essentially, we track detailed results in terms of the top universities. So the Ivy League universities, and certainly universities like Harvard, Stanford, MIT, those universities that are what are called need blind, that don't consider, your need for funding when you apply. Those see huge interest from international students all round. So top universities are generally the target for international students. But I would say essentially one would look at, say, the top 50 universities in the US when we're talking about a kind of top tier of university. And it's important to think about tiers of schools, versus just kind of, a particular ranking. So to think in those kind of broad categories. So we would work with all of those schools. But I mean, each year, so this year, I think 900 students with Crimson, applied to the US. So and they're getting into universities across the spectrum. But we have great success in terms of the top universities, with I think 88 acceptances to the Ivy League in this round, and top 20 US 150 acceptances. So generally the ones that we would talk about being very holistic in their application admissions process.
Yeah.
So, Rebecca, a lot of people think that they need to contact a company like yourselves if they're wanting their child to go and study overseas and, one day return with the education in hand. I think, what's important for our listeners today to understand is that in going to America, perhaps a visa, in the pipeline, or applying still for the green card, that is still very important to get their child, like you say, mapped to the right varsity with the right things that are there. So I think that it's important for people to understand that this is not just for people that are wanting to go there and study and come back home. It's also for people that are wanting to go across to America to find themselves in the right institutions, and following the right courses. So I think that's fundamental factors. And specifically, I think, Lenny, for both you and I, we're a little bit early in the starting blocks, but most certainly, one needs to, like Rebecca's saying now, not leave it too late.
Yeah.
I think also Trevor, on what you said there, if you have a green card or a visa, but certainly something like a green card will make your admissions journey that much easier, as well. So sure. that will be taken into account in terms of US admissions.
Mm-hmm. So talking about scholarships and stuff like that. So I know the US, they're very fond of giving scholarships. I mean, I think if you can hit a ping pong ball straight 5 times in a row, I think you might qualify for it. But I mean, I know they are just. Do you guys assist with something like that as well?
You're right. I mean, certainly the US is more generous than anywhere else in the world. You're not really going to get a scholarship or anything from anywhere else, or certainly not financial aid funding. But yeah, so in the US, both scholarships, so which funding handed out by universities based on kind of academic merit, and then a financial aid process, right, where students and families go through, a process of filling out forms, indicating what amount of money they can pay towards US fees. And so scholarships are always done on a kind of case-by-case basis, and that's money offered by the school. So depending on which university you're going to be applying to, then you would get funding from that school in the form of a scholarship or a grant. And then we support families, and so strategists would do that, and we also support families through that financial aid process, which is quite complex in terms of, making the best decisions, when to ask for it, which schools are you going to ask for funding from, right, to make sure that your chances of admission remain good.
So Rebecca, we've got 1 or 2 questions that have come through over here, and we can maybe just look at those quickly. The one over here is, will you be able to assist in postgraduate studies? Or someone that might have already completed those undergrad studies, how would that process look?
So depending on their academic transcript, so we assess their academic transcript, and then we would team them up with a strategist, and then they would absolutely go through that process of identifying. And it's not that someone tells them which schools to apply to, right? It's obviously works with the student to be able to determine which is the best choice of university for them based on their requirements ranking, whether, right, whatever the case may be, and then we would do the necessary tutoring for any admission testing, and then they would, so I think probably the difference, though, is a postgrad program would be a bit shorter, right? An undergrad program where admissions are tough, particularly to those top universities, like I say, it could be a number of years. But I mean, the process outside of that is pretty much the same. You do the strategizing, you do the choosing of schools, the researching of schools and programs, and then you do the relevant testing, and then you get the application support around the essays or personal statements and supplementary essays that you would need to submit for those schools. Okay,
cool. Madeleine, I hope that helped. I know you might have a ton more questions, so if you want to, you can reach out to Rebecca, and we'll leave the details later on. So another question from Marie van der Merwe says, I completed a 3-year bachelor's degree in psychological counseling from UNISA in 2020, exit level 6. Is it equivalent to a bachelor's in the USA?
Yeah, so I mean, technically a bachelor in the US is, I mean, it's all a 4-year degree, right? In the US, it's all going to be a 4-year degree. So one might have to check. It might vary from school to school, but in the US, you can generally do things like, you can combine courses, right? So you can kind of do essentially what is, instead of doing, say, an honors in South Africa, you go straight into a master's there. So it might vary from school to school, but they would roughly see that it's the equivalent of, because a South African degree is 3 years, just like a degree in the UK would be 3 years, and then someone would go to the US to do their master's after a 3-year course.
Good.
So Rebecca, if one wants to follow a process with yourselves, what is the first step?
So I can drop in some links. People are interested and they can reach out to us. So generally we would do we would connect with people. We'd gather some of their information, what their targets are, goals, their current profile, academics, as much information as they have. We kind of capture that in a form, and then we would have an initial consultation with them. So postgrad might look a little bit different because it's obviously more specific, but in terms of course, and students have done a bit of research themselves. But from an undergrad point of view, we would then go straight into a consultation, and then we would go through their profile, then we would follow that up with a program that we would put together, because of course there are a myriad of different services involved in admissions consulting. And then once students kind of have their program, then they kind of choose to sign up with us. But I can drop some links into the chat box for anyone who's interested.
Okay. And then last but not least, on my side at least, is what are the common mistakes that people actually make doing this?
Sure. So I think a couple of things. The one I've said is leaving it too late. So absolutely, that's really a common mistake. I think the other one I've also mentioned, which is thinking that academics is enough. And it's not. It's a holistic process, and much more competitive, way more competitive for top universities than people think it is. And so it's not a case of, you know, I've got 90% in my IB exam, so I'm a shoo-in. And I think also just that there's a strategy involved, right? It's not about just going to any, you know, university in the US. You know, it's not Donald Trump University, for example. It's not about going to any university. It's about being happy for your time at university, right? So finding the fit that's right for you, because it's a place that has a great soccer program or a great kind of choir program, or it's an international university, right? It's not too rural. So considering those is really important. Yeah, I think those are probably the key ones.
Cool.
Excellent, Rebecca. Thank you so much. I think that gave a lot of insight and a lot of people some information. We're going to ask that you do share in the chat box your information, but we will also post it on our website, as well as have this on our YouTube channel for people to go back and listen to at a later stage. But we want to thank you for your time this afternoon, Rebecca, and for those insights and certainly that information. And it gives me a lot of comfort about what we need to do next. My son is a big swimmer. So we'll be talking to you about some of the good swimming institutions that side.
and so, on an athletic pathway, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, good. So Rebecca, thank you very much for your time. Len, I don't know if you've got any more questions that you'd like to pose.
No, like I said in the beginning, I think this is something you can deep dive into on many aspects, and I think that what we might still do in the future is just when we can do this again, we would actually just want to, you know, obviously gather some of the questions that have come in on this, and also just you know, if we want to take it on to zoom into it, if I can use the pun like that, is zoom in it and say, listen, how does it actually work in a process, and actually unpack it in front of people so that they can know. It's always good to see things visually. And I know when you go into a new country, you know, doing something like this can be very daunting. You know, if you don't understand, you know, what you should have gathered, what documents you should have, and you know, there's a lot more to this than just filling out a form and crossing your fingers and hoping for the best. Cool.
Really agree.
All right, guys.
So Rebecca, possibly have you on soon again.
Thanks, Lenny.
Thanks, Rebecca. All the best, eh?
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Ciao.